Ultimately, we want to change society's view on abortion.
A year of change, rewriting abortion law.
They do not want their rights to be taken away.
1 year ago, the Supreme Court overturned what had been the law of the land. Roe v. Wade, no more.
Resistance always matters.
Now, what's changed, what's still ahead, and the impact on everyday life.
This is a Scripps News special report, Abortion in America. What's next? Reporting from Seattle, Maritza Giorgio.
The Supreme Court may have ruled, but the legal battles over abortion rights are far from over. Hello from Seattle. In a moment, I'll explain why we're here in Washington State instead of Washington, D.C. But first, the tumultuous past year. A year ago, by a 5-4 margin, the Supreme Court ruled abortion is not a constitutionally protected right, and immediately bans began to take effect. In Texas, for example, a trigger ban snapped into place, making nearly all abortions a felony. Over the past year, 14 states, including Texas, now have total abortion bans. Georgia has a 6-week ban. Florida, not shown here, may soon join Georgia, but legal challenges are pending there too.
These are children with detectable heartbeats, and I think to do that was very humane, and I think it was something that every pro-lifer appreciates that we were able to get that done.
Right now, about 2 in 5 women between the ages of 15 and 44 now live in states with more abortion restrictions than before. That's 25 million women. On tap for you, an important discussion about where we are as a country and where we are going. In a moment, national political correspondent Alex Miller joins me. She has been covering abortion since before the Supreme Court's decision, and 2 guests with differing viewpoints appeal directly to you at home. But first, we go to where this chapter in American history began. Jackson, Mississippi, the clinic at the center of the Supreme Court's decision. Our Tammy Estwick is there.
A year later, Scripps News sat down with Diane Durzis, that former clinic owner who was in the middle of it all. That Mississippi clinic, now closed, turned into a consignment shop.
How many people would say to me, "You're crazy. They're never going to make this illegal." But they did. They will.
When a conservative majority U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade a year ago, sending abortion legality decisions back to the states, some were shocked. But not Diane Durzis, the former owner of the Mississippi abortion clinic at the center of the case.
You know, those of us that have been providers have seen this coming.
In June 2022, this now unassuming white building in the middle of the artsy Fondren district of Jackson, Mississippi, was pink, iconic, and home to the state's only abortion clinic for almost 2 decades. Durzis ran the clinic even amid fierce opposition, protests, lawsuits, and sometimes violence on the steep street that led to the clinic entrance. Today, the Pink House staff have relocated to a place she calls Pink House West.
So they've just moved to New Mexico, where they've been warmly welcomed. It's amazing, a completely different environment from what they were accustomed to. But, you know, women can be seen there, unfortunately. That's not true in the state of Mississippi any longer.
Durzis has been fighting for abortion rights for decades. In the 1970s, after the Roe decision, Durzis worked as a counselor.
And when they opened the first clinic in Alabama, I just drove them crazy until they hired me.
A serial bomber struck that Alabama clinic in 1998.
He killed an officer who was working as a security guard, and he maimed one of the RNs who was there and who lives with us to this very day.
As years passed, Durzis watched the political tide turn. States like Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi began proposing bills chipping away at abortion rights. Eventually, Durzis moved to Jackson.
They got smarter as time went on. Then they began in the courtrooms, in your local races, and they built from there to be in a position which they're in now, and that's to completely take over a state.
I came to this capital in 1986.
On the other side, Terry Herring runs one of the biggest pro-life organizations in the Magnolia State, Choose Life Mississippi.
Over the last 35 years, we've passed many laws.
Among them, a trigger law, which immediately banned abortion in Mississippi when the Supreme Court issued its decision against Jackson Women's Health Organization. Many here now wondering what's next.
They're coming after your birth control next.
That is so far from where we want to go with our legislature and our push. To me, you turn it into that into a health question. Is it really healthy for women to be on hormones from the time they're 14, 15, 16? Hopefully not until they're 18, but is that a healthy thing for women?
This past March, facing Democratic criticism that he didn't care about life after birth, Republican Governor Tate Reeves expanded Medicaid for mothers. And to encourage adoption, lawmakers are pledging to reform foster care services in Mississippi, along with other ideas.
Those that have money will get. They've always gotten. You can catch a plane and be there in an hour. But those who don't have money, and from the states that we know all too well, they're the ones forced to have children.
Durzis hopes abortion clinics will be back in Mississippi sometime soon. But for now, she is focusing on her other clinics from Virginia to New Mexico. Tammy Eswick, Scripps News, Jackson, Mississippi.
From Mississippi, a state where abortion is banned, to back here in Washington state, where access to abortion has become more protected over the past year. In fact, for abortion rights supporters, the state has emerged as a beacon of hope. It's found success in new legal action, taking on everything from federal law to the FDA. At the center of it, Attorney General Bob Ferguson. So we heard for many years, especially on the campaign trail, that Roe v. Wade was a law of the land. Yeah. Well, until it wasn't anymore. So what else is at stake here, and what precedent is set now for other controversial issues that have been considered law of the land?
Oh my gosh, well, if you look at Dobbs, even the decision itself, you've got justices who are essentially telegraphing that they would essentially welcome challenges to take on existing rights that we take for granted, right? How far does it go when it comes to use of contraception, for example, for same-sex couple, for same-sex rights? The list goes on. But if this Supreme Court is going to issue such a radical decision, and that is what it is, it's a radical decision overturning a precedent that's been in place for decades without any new basis in law or fact, then yes, we have to be prepared for almost anything.
So what do you predict we'll see if we continue with that kind of patchwork system?
You're going to see a balkanization between the states. That's what the Supreme Court has put in place, where some states, like Washington, you have these rights that you've always enjoyed. In other states, like Idaho, our neighbor to the east, those rights have been taken away. And I do not see, just being candid, I don't see that changing anytime soon, and I worry that potentially it could get worse, as we've seen in legal challenges trying to take away those rights, even in Washington state, access to abortion medication, for example. So I worry that, I guess what I would say is, anti-abortion activists will not stop until they remove every last vestige of reproductive freedom for all Americans. They're not going to stop with Dobbs.
So this is just the next thing that they'll go after in the next election.
Well, we saw
cycle.
that with the mifepristone case in Texas. I mean, it's not just an idea I have. They went out and tried to do it, are trying to do it as we speak.
So you led the way on that lawsuit in Texas, the mifepristone challenge. How do you see that playing out? I know it's still in limbo.
Yeah, so when that lawsuit was filed in Texas, seeking a national ban, by the way, on access to mifepristone, most abortions are done by medication using mifepristone. We did file our own legal action here in Washington state that was successful. And so what you have now are two cases with competing decisions, essentially, by federal judges, and those cases are working their way up.
But isn't the writing on the wall there?
I mean, perhaps. What I would say is, well, first, I'm a glass half full kind of guy in general. But I would say the legal challenge to mifepristone is, it's out there from a legal standpoint. Mifepristone has been available to women in the United States for a couple decades. And so only now does this anti-abortion group come along and say, oh no, the FDA should never have approved mifepristone. Well, that's a pretty steep hill to climb. It's been around for 20 years. It's safer than Viagra. Viagra is available without any restrictions at all, for example. So I feel that it's a pretty steep hill for them.
How long do you anticipate we're going to see all of this play out in the courts?
Oh, I mean, I can't put a time. There's no end to it. I mean, this is going to be a part of our lives as Americans for many, many, many years. Of that, I'm very, very confident. It's so polarized right now. States are balkanized. The Supreme Court isn't changing its makeup anytime soon. And so, no, you'll be seeing litigation around these core rights going on for many, many years.
People who take the anti-abortion stance say that this is just plain morally wrong. There's no wiggle room for some of them, not even in the case of incest or rape. Yeah. Do you think there's, I mean, you have people on both sides who are so staunch in their beliefs on this. Do you think there's any room for compromise?
Well, what I would say is that while folks have opposing views, the overwhelming majority of Americans want access to the full range of reproductive freedom. So while I get there's always a debate out there, but the Supreme Court upended the rights of women over many, many decades in a way that, you know, I choose my words carefully, but it's radical. You know, it's untethered from legal principles, it's untethered from legal case law, it's untethered from the view of American people or the facts. And that's what I find extremely troubling. That the only thing that changed, by the way, the only thing that changed was one thing, the makeup of the U.S. Supreme Court. Nothing changed in the law, nothing changed in the factual backgrounds related to abortion. The only thing that changed was the makeup of the Supreme Court, and that politicization of the Supreme Court that takes away a right for the first time for the American people, that is deeply troubling.
A quick break, then I'm back with a panel of women on the front edge of this debate. For supporters of abortion rights, what is the best case scenario? Can abortion rights be restored? And for opponents, what's the end goal? Is it a federal abortion ban? This is a Scripps News special report, Abortion in America, What's Next?
You're watching a Scripps News special report, Abortion in America, What's Next?
Back now from Seattle, Washington, a state leading the fight for abortion rights. Before the break, I posed some questions. For supporters of abortion rights, what's their best case scenario? For opponents, are they satisfied with letting states decide, or is a national ban next? Let's find out. Joining me now are three women with unique insights. Alex Miller is with Scripps News. She's a national political correspondent who has reported on abortion since before the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Carol Tobias is a leading voice in the fight to ban abortion. She's president of the organization National Right to Life and the executive director of the Women's March, Rachel O'Leary Carmona. Welcome to you three women. Alex, I want to start with you. How would you characterize your reporting for the past year?
Well, it's been interesting to watch this unfold in real time. States where I reported pre-Dobbs, many of those clinics are now closed. I've traveled to roughly a dozen states since the Dobbs decision. And again, many of those are now closed. But what's been most fascinating to me, Maritza, is not just the laws that we've seen specifically surrounding abortion change, obviously changing the right to get one itself, but also the laws surrounding abortion, whether it's a state like Utah who has now said if you want to obtain an abortion and use a rape exception, you need to report that to law enforcement first. Or if it's Idaho that has a new law dealing with moving across state lines. If you look at Florida, that is a state that used to have the most abortions nationally, and now they are facing down their own state Supreme Court case that could pretty much take away all of the abortions. There have been numerous states, more than just these three, obviously, that have made such changes, not only to the ability to get an abortion, but also everything around surrounding it.
Yeah, you've certainly been reporting on the front lines of history, Alex. Carol, I want to go to you because you've been fighting for the end of Roe v. Wade for decades. You've been affiliated with National Right to Life for more than 30 years. So what has the past year meant for you?
It has been an exciting year. After almost a 50-year battle to overturn Roe v. Wade, we were successful. So we realize we have a lot of fights still ahead of us, but we have an opportunity to protect more and more children, and that's what we've been working for.
Rachel, I was actually at the Supreme Court the night the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision overturning Roe was leaked. I saw both angry people, I saw elated people. So what are you feeling here right now as we talk?
I mean, I think that what has happened over the last year has been, no matter what your feelings are about abortion, I think mine are clear. I support reproductive freedom for women. And I think that no matter how you feel about abortion, what has happened post Dobbs' decision has been a loss for our country in general. There has been an attack on democracy that has been waged on women's bodies, where we see in ballot initiatives and in proxy votes and elections that this is not the will of the American people. A supermajority of Americans across the aisle do not want this. And in fact, since the Dobbs decision, more people now support abortion rights and reproductive freedom than before. So I think this is just this place where we are out of step. We're out of step with the American people, and we're out of step with the global community who are making more and more permissive laws about abortion. And I think it's a correction that the American voters will make in the ballot box, like as we saw in 2022. And I think it's a shame for our country.
Carol, I want to show our viewers something that you tweeted. It says, quote, in every state, a woman whose life is endangered by pregnancy can get an abortion, ectopic pregnancies can be removed, and miscarriages can be treated. Anyone who says different is lying to you. But we're hearing countless stories of women who say that's just not true. Providers in Texas are threatened now with felonies. There are states simply that just don't have clinics anymore. I know in Idaho, a rural hospital stopped delivering all babies, partly because of newly enacted state laws that could subject doctors to prosecution. So why do you say these women are lying when medical professionals back them up?
Every state law allows abortion if the woman's life is in danger. If she has an ectopic pregnancy or if it is a miscarriage, that can be taken care of. That's why the doctors go to school, because they learn how to empty a pregnancy, whether it is birth or a complication earlier in the pregnancy. That is allowed in every state. And there may be cases where it's not being done, but a lot of that is going to be more of an insurance malpractice, whatever case. It's not because of the law. And I will say that there are some states that maybe some of it needs to be clarified for the doctors. But there is no state that is going to say if you have an ectopic pregnancy or if you are experiencing a miscarriage, you cannot be treated.
But do you think that it should be clarified if doctors are saying we're not going to do these procedures at all and possibly putting women's lives in danger?
Why wouldn't the doctors do it? I mean, we've got pro-life doctors. There are certainly pro-life hospitals, many in the Catholic healthcare system. They know how to handle problem pregnancies, and they do it every day.
Carol, 5 justices on the Supreme Court said they wanted to return this issue of abortion back to the states. So do you support that, or is a federal abortion ban your end goal?
Well, actually, the court said that they were returning the decision back to elected representatives. So that would be both state and federal. There is not going to be a national ban, as many people like to call it, a national law that would protect unborn children for the foreseeable future. What I think we can and should see are practical measures like no tax dollars being involved in paying for or promoting abortions, conscience protections for healthcare providers who don't want to be involved in taking the life of an innocent unborn child, making sure that women realize that there are resources available, whether it be the public or private sector.
Rachel, what do you see as your best case scenario right now? Can abortion rights be restored as a matter of federal law? I mean, do you see a path there?
There was legislation that was introduced by Representative Ayanna Pressley that would, it's called the Abortion Justice Act, that would return these rights to American women. And I think that it is federal legislation would be the protection that we're looking for. And if folks want to make the choice between themselves, their family, their doctor, their God, to carry a pregnancy to term or to terminate it for either medical reasons, health reasons, or other reasons, that should really be a private decision. And so we are fighting for that legislation that makes that so and removes barriers to access for poor women or for rural women that may have limited access to health care.
Alex, when the Supreme Court ruled, some states, like Texas, immediately banned almost all abortions. Other states implemented 15-week bans. Now they're moving to 6-week bans. So why is that 6-week mark significant?
Well, for the anti-abortion advocates, they believe this is around when you can hear a heartbeat. Now, it's not an actual heart. It's the blood vessels that will eventually form a heart. But for women who seek an abortion, this really narrows the window. Most women do not know that they are pregnant at 6 weeks. You know, it's basically like they are 2 weeks late on their period. And when I spent time in Shreveport, Louisiana at a clinic, one of the things that I was most fascinated by was the calls that they were taking. You know, a lot of the concern around here is what's called essentially timing out of the ability to get an abortion. So when you look at the numbers, the majority of abortions that are happening are not going to be allowed anymore if some of these 6-week bans continue to go into effect, simply because that's when the majority of women are getting abortions. And specifically for minors, you know, they don't know these laws sometimes. And so the concerns that they have, the fear of talking to a parent or guardian about this in these situations when there's a 6-week ban, every single day matters in the ability not only to go call a clinic, but also the ability to even just get an appointment.
Alex, Carol, Rachel, thank you so much. More to come here on this Scripps News special report, including a trend you may find surprising about teenagers and abortion. Back now with a trend you may find surprising about teenagers and abortion. This was the trend before the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The number of teenagers obtaining an abortion had been dropping in every age group from a high in the 1980s. We have a lot more to get to this hour. We're about to take you inside a place called a Crisis Pregnancy Center, designed to steer women away from abortion. They're getting more funding than ever in places like Florida. But what's actually happening inside? That's next on this Scripps News special report.
This is a Scripps News special report, Abortion in America. What's next? Here again from Seattle, Maritza Giorgio.
Hello again from the Evergreen State. On the front lines of fighting to keep abortion ever legal, Washington is leading a group of 17 states plus the District of Columbia in a fight to preserve access to the abortion pill, mifepristone. Here, there are no waiting periods